We are back live with the weekly flagship news show of the Cheap Heat Productions Network. I would be talking about none other than Ryder's Rasslin review, featuring, of course, the big bad wolf himself, Mr. Ryder, and, of course, the man on the Legends deal, the godfather of the Cheap Heat Productions. That would be Mr. Maurice Cordell. How are you gentlemen doing today?
Excellent.
Also excellent. A little rain. It's a little rainy here in Florida, but I think the sun's coming out today.
Excellent, excellent. Again, here we have a massive heat warning, and the air quality is not the best, but we shall persevere. We've got a very special guest coming on today. His name is Glen Osborne, ECW Original, a man that we've talked about on the show. We're gonna welcome him on soon, and give him and Mr. Ryder an opportunity to talk about their careers, some of the war stories involved, and very, very importantly, the match in which Mr. Osborne was with JT Smith against the Magnificent Morocco and Eddie Gilbert that resulted in the first ever debut of Paul E. Dangerously in Eastern Championship Wrestling. So lots of good stuff to talk about there. I guess a logical place to start is we're about 24 hours since Dick Pic workout gate from one's favorite Irishman, Conor McGregor. How's the fallout there?
He was in Fort Lauderdale when he took the pic, apparently. He was just down the street at the freaking Ocean Manor. He's taking pictures of all my buddies. And he just does that.
I think every day I see something that's not going well for him for the old presidency race.
Listen, you can do no wrong in a presidential race anymore. The bar has been set so low. Say what you want. It'll make him more popular. I'm a straight motherfucker. I'm envious of that little short bastard.
Well, that's how they say it goes, right? It's unfortunate though that the one photo he looked to be possibly hurting his physical well-being by having some kind of workout device strapped to the end of it. That's a product of I think a little bit too much of the white stuff and other assorted deals there. But in all seriousness, do you think, Morris, that he can kiss higher office? Sorry, that's a bad word, but the highest office no, that won't work either. The head of your country away now that his shenanigans have come out once again.
You see, there's a lot of corruption in this country, and I know all too well at the lower end of the scale now. But he can't run for president unless he gets 20 people in government to back him to run for president. So are 20 people going to back him after what's happened? More so with the civil case that's only just happened a couple of months back. I think that people would be scared to put him to nominate him. I can't nominate the guy because I'm in a council of 24 people, so everybody has to agree, or the majority do, on one person. And those people that are in with me will have people from their political parties that they're going to nominate, thus making my vote null and void anyway, because they've got the numbers. So it's a very fucked up system over here. You know, really anybody who wants to should be able to run for president. I don't know what way it is in the States, but over here it's almost politically controlled. So he, with everything that's happened lately, he probably wouldn't have got the nomination anyway, but certainly not now anyway. That's my reading on it. But he should, in my opinion, though, he should be, or anyone should be allowed to run for president if they want.
Well, my understanding was through history that anyone could run for president of the United States. That is up until the mid-1940s, when anyone who sides with Israel against everything in the world gets to be president. So as long as you side with Israel, you can be president of the United States.
It's a good thing we're 5 minutes.
To be in the situation.
It's a good thing we're 5 minutes into the video before you mentioned that, because now we're fine. But I'm sure YouTube would object to that, but we're good. We're 5 minutes in. But guess what? We have Mr. Glen Osborne joining us here. Glen, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you very much. It's great to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Glenn.
I
How's
guess, sorry, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I was just going to say, how's everybody doing?
Excellent.
Good, good. Yeah, Ryder, I didn't see you that long ago, so that's cool.
I'm envious. I'm envious of the beard, Glenn.
Thanks. Yeah, right. I need a little color in there. Getting alarmingly white. So, it happens. Premature graying, I suppose.
We got to give a little backstory on Glenn and I's relationship, because there was once this young, aspiring 180-pound wrestler named Kenny that went to a little wrestling school and got trained by one said Glen Osborne. And he has been my friend since 1994, 95. And
no, I was thinking 3 or 4, but yeah, probably 4. Probably 94, I want to say.
I think it was 94, right?
Yeah, Bay's school.
Yeah, Bay's school. So Glenn, we've been talking about you through the conversation we've been having here, but most notably, we discussed your ECW career and how you were the launching pad for one Paul E. Dangerously.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how that wound up happening. I guess I was in the right place at the right time, or something. But yeah, that was an interesting night. I'd say it's a memorable night, but I guess I'm lucky that it's memorable. At that phone shot, could have scrambled my memory for a long time.
Yeah, we have some stills of that here. It's of course you and JT Smith. I think there's a couple of memorable ones here. First, where you see Paulie running down at breakneck speed, something he certainly could not do today, and then winding up and just smashing you. It looked like pretty straight on, to the point where a piece of the phone was broken off. You can see it on the canvas there when he's rolling hot stuff over there, and then as the cowardly heel rolls out and watches the 3 count. How did that whole thing come together, Glenn, in terms of you being in the match against Morocco and Eddie Gilbert, and then the finish there?
Well, in the beginning, when ECW was first, on Eastern, obviously, and Eddie started booking, I liked Eddie. He liked me a lot in the beginning, and I was in with those guys because I was starting to get a little bit of a push. I had the TV title before that, and they thought it'd be a good idea and I defended it on the pilot, and then they thought it'd be a good idea to just have a tournament for the TV title. So they said, let's just have that. So Eddie was giving me a decent push. I got to the finals of the tournament, and then Snuka went over, which, that was cool and everything. But somewhere along the way, and I've said it on other shows, I don't know what happened with Eddie, but all of a sudden he started, he didn't like me so much anymore. And honest to God, I have no idea why, but I started getting, work down the card and things like that. And Paul Lee came in that night, and I heard him talking he was really nice. I have to say, when he first came in, he was very nice to all of us. And I heard him saying to somebody in the back, you got to really, if you're going to, one of the other managers, you really got to lay it in on these big, bad, MFers, and you got to hit them. And so I'm listening to that. And then he comes down and he, nailed me with the phone. We did the finish. I mean, I felt it for sure. But, and then when I got in the back, he came right up to me too. I thought this is cool. I guess this is before everything went down. He came right up to me and he grabbed me by the face. He was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay." He was like, "All right, good. So he was cool about it. It's not like he, stiffed me with the phone and then just didn't give a shit, To his credit, he was cool. And then I guess somewhere along the way, we started, dropping like flies. Some of us, like myself, I left, and then other ones just stopped getting used or got fired because I didn't want that to happen. I saw the writing on the wall, and I thought it'd be best to stake out on my own at that point. But Eddie's long gone now, sadly. I never had a problem with Todd. Todd was cool with me, but Eddie, I don't know what happened there. And then obviously Paul Lee, that was his first night, and then he started taking the book over, and By the time I left, it was like just starting that extreme turnover, like 93 sometime. I was gone by 94. So that was the story of that evening. We were doing TV tapings, obviously. So, we were doing a few shows a night in those days.
But now you at one point, though, Glenn, you were considered to be one of the next British Bulldogs, correct?
That's what I heard. I had heard that. I had heard a couple of things along those lines about different ideas. But yes, that was one that I had heard. So how long that could have gone, but that's one of the ideas that I heard floated. And like with you, Kenny, like the Brood and all that stuff, I'd heard about that too.
You're telling the Brood story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'd heard about that.
Glenn and I are standing. Was it Meadowlands or was it Madison Square Garden? I forget which.
Yeah, it wasn't. I was thinking it wasn't up at Penn State, was it? Up at the.
I don't think so. Maybe it was.
No, I think you're right. I think it was the Meadowlands.
Sorry, Meadowlands. And they pretty much told us that we were going to be the next Brood, Glenn and I. That we were going to be the next Brood. And then
That's what I heard.
No more than like an hour later, here come the fucking Hardy Boys. You literally just told us to get ready.
And that's the thing. You can have starts and stops and things, and if you get in, you start getting a look and everything like that. I mean, that's awesome. Very few people even get to that point, but it just doesn't work out for everybody. Not everybody's gonna, main event WrestleMania, but it was always just an honor, and everybody was so nice up there. Kenny knew a lot of folks up there too, and they were just really, really nice. I thought, they were treated us really well, and it was like old home week for you up there because you were working those shows. You were working for them a lot. I remember like 99, 2000, 2001, if I remember.
I was there, yeah. I think 98 was my first match there, and then I was there pretty much full time. I think. When did they buy WCW, Jack?
2000, I think.
So I think that slowed me down a little bit because they had such an influx. But that's when I got sent down to OVW.
Okay, gotcha. All right, wow, that's interesting.
But we had, it was fun was back then, and look at the talent pool that came out of Liberty All-Star Wrestling.
Yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, definitely. Nate, you, God, I'm forgetting so many people. Rob, Thomas Rodman.
Carino was in there. Was it Carino?
Yeah, Carino. Oh my God. Yeah, he was. Was he still in training at that point?
Yeah.
Or he was working a little bit? Oh my God, I forgot about that. Jeez. But yeah, I like Bay School. That was a nice little setup with the gym out front and the ring in the back, like so many others were.
Good.
It was cool.
It was a nice ring, right? Like the ring was a good ring.
It was a nice ring. Yeah, the size was just right, and it was a really good ring to learn bumps in, I thought, for sure. And the space back there was just enough to change, and there wasn't a lot of extra crap, so, but it was good, man. It was a good class, good crew guys, and like Harley would come through, and Carl would pick me up, and then we'd come down, and you said Carino, and a whole bunch of guys would come down there. It was cool. Good learning atmosphere, I thought.
Now you were trained by Larry Winters, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about that. How did that happen? How did you get into wrestling, Glenn? I don't think I've ever asked you.
Oh man,
you were just a skinny, out of shape, puny pencil neck geek when I met you.
Yeah. Oh geez. Well, I mean, I grew up a fan.
Glenn was so big that when he walked into WWE, I swear Triple H got mad. It was furious. And then we went to wrestle, and you went out first to the ring, and Terry Taylor just looks at me and goes, "You're dead." And that's all he said.
Yeah, that's funny.
Right. I'm gonna win this.
Yeah, man.
I don't think he's gonna let you win.
That's funny, man. Yeah. I guess like most guys, I was a fan growing up. and I had a chance to get into it. Joel's wrestling radio show was on in those days, late 80s, early 90s, and I had originally tried out at the Monster Factory, and that's when Larry Sharp owned it. And there was actually the Godfather was there at that time. There was a couple other guys that went on to do some stuff. Johnny Hotbody actually was the one running the tryouts for Larry Sharp that night, funny enough. And so I passed my tryout at the Monster Factory, but I was like 18. I was in school, and I had to do some more. I'd earned some more money and stuff, so I didn't end up going there. But then I found out from a friend of mine about Joel's school through the radio show, and that they were going to have open tryouts. And I thought, now I was in a better position to do it. So I went up there and passed the tryout. And the trainers originally were Larry Winters and Ron Shaw. Do you remember Ron Shaw? The man who made David Sammartino submit to the bear hug. And yeah, so he was yeah, wasn't that nuts? So they were the original two trainers, and Ron wasn't there for too long. I mean, he taught me some good stuff, but Larry was absolutely my principal trainer. But like everybody else, I mean, you get trained, and then you just get sort of trained by so many other people after that. You get seasoned and everything. But Larry was a great trainer. He was patient. When I was going to throw up, he didn't just say, go throw up in the corner. He'd take me by the wrist and say, come on, I'll take you to the bathroom and throw up there. Like, he was nice, he was patient, and I trusted him a lot. And it was Ringmasters Wrestling School. And I went there, and Sandman and JT Smith and Jimmy Giannetti and Stetson and Hotbody were already wrestling by that point, but they'd come to the school a lot. Joel would have like Paul Orndorff and Buddy Landell and these guys come down and have little classes for us. But it was hard work, you just work in the ring. I remember one night they taught JT Smith that a Samoan drop would be a good bump for like a good finisher or something for him. So I was the crash test on me over and over a whole night. I just took Samoan drops from JT over and over. So, you go through all that. It's all part of the training stuff. But Larry was tough but fair, and he was very old school, which he imparted to all of us kayfabe. Any personal appearances, we would do to hype a show beforehand or anything. He was adamant that heels and faces stay apart. Like Jimmy Giannetti and I were teenagers and we were friends, so we kind of wanted to hang out, but he made sure, that we protected everything. And sadly, that's not taught anymore. I don't think, maybe in a few places, but I really value the way all of us guys, in this generation were taught.
I wanted to touch on that because you said that. You mentioned that like we were all trained. You learn from one guy, but you also learn from everybody else.
Yeah.
Nowadays with NXT and the way they're doing this in WWE, that it's hurting the show, the visibility, and the actual just sport of wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Short answer. When I watched some NXT stuff from whenever that started back in the beginning, it was really promising. It looked great. But they were taking a lot of the cream of the crop of the independents who were wrestlers. It's discouraging, I think, to see like this newest class coming in. I saw, and there's not one wrestler in there. Like they're all from other sports or other disciplines. It's not. It's, to my mind anyway. That's not professional wrestling. I admire the athleticism like crazy, but I feel kind of like now it's kind of like they're handed a script, shown how to do the big moves. They have to be, hot, and then and that's about it. Psychology doesn't need to be taught. TV takes care of that for them. They don't have to go in front of a different crowd every night with a different size ring, where maybe nobody knows you and get over, night after night. You learn that. I don't know if you learn that on the independents anymore. You used to, in those days. So I feel like they're getting shorted in a way because, when they would run out of contracts and things, the independents back then were more akin to kind of more of a lateral move. It wasn't like it's seen now, like the independents are like a notch above the backyard. We used to get big stars all the time, coming on shows and we'd learn from, and I just don't think they have that chance. And they're not learning how to look to work, to really work psychology, nothing beyond what looks spectacular in the ring. And they're not going out onto the independents anymore. With not that I'm seeing, wasn't like Matt Riddle out there recently and some people, and they just don't seem to make it. They don't have the mindset and they don't know how to work. And other than that, I guess that's just my take. So they're not learning how to get over. They're not learning how to do any psychology. They're not taught how to work a crowd or to get, that's so important. They're stars, but I don't know if you probably know the names better than me. If you put someone out of NXT on an independent show with, someone who grabs them in a headlock and just says, "Oh, my name's Joe. Nice to meet you. Shoot me in," that kind of thing. They're going to be freaking out. But luckily, they don't really have to do that anymore, I guess. That kind of through work or whatever is probably not a thing. Sometimes, and sounds really old school, but it's true. I'd wrestle guys like Ace or Julio, and you wouldn't see them until you were in the ring. Now I don't know where. Right around the turn of the 2000s is when everybody started walking through every little step, and that's not even fun. It's just not to me.
You're trying to remember the whole thing, and if you mess up, then if the guy messes up, he's lost.
And then they're completely lost, and that's the thing, that I don't think
they try and go back to before they screwed up, and it just looks like a mess.
Yeah, they try to go back to the pre-planned spot rather than, I guess it was Jake Roberts that said wrestling's not acting, it's reacting. So if there's an F up and the crowd gets on, you either use it to your advantage or get them off of you, turn it around and do something else. I mean, how transparent is it if you pick them up and just try to do the same damn thing right away? It looks like shit, so again, my opinion from.
You had mentioned working, and you worked, they put you up against a lot of WWE guys on the indies every time they put against you. But you had one that sticks out in my mind, and it was a barn burner in ECWA. It was one of the best matches I've ever seen. It was you versus Test. You guys went, you guys were supposed to go like 15 minutes.
I didn't get the memo. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I came back through it because we had worked a few times, and he was a great guy. We worked well together. I went out there and we did a few spots, and I came back and Jim was like, "Was everything okay? Was he all right?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, you only went 3 minutes. And I said, "Oh, shit, I don't know how the hell that happened. That's the only time that's ever happened to me. Maybe it's like one of those, lost time phenomenon that happens to people where they feel like, I was in there for 15 minutes and it was only 3. I have no idea. Maybe that was concussion stuff. I thought we did a whole match and he came off with the elbow. I don't remember. That's about all I remember. And just Jim saying, and Jim was fine about it, but I was more bewildered than anything. So, but I did tear my xiphoid in a.
You two came from the curtain like you had the freaking Bret Hart Stone Cold match.
It was the weirdest thing. It was the weirdest. I know. It was the strangest thing. I don't know what happened. We did have a couple matches. There was one on YouTube. I don't know if it's still up there that we had that was probably 10, 12, something like that. But holy crap. Yeah, that was weird too. But yeah, Jim used to bring, and Blaine, all those guys down, like Test and Christian and Edge and a whole slew of them. Remember Joey Legend?
Yeah, Joey's a good guy.
Yeah, real nice guy. Blaine's was a lot of fun too,
In your career,
mm-hmm.
Who's the one guy that you worked that was just the highlight? That was the guy you couldn't believe you got the word. Mine was Honky Tonk Man. Like
God!
It was like we were born to work each other. It was great.
Isn't that awesome? That's awesome. I would say, and then again, back. What's that? Okay. Oh, I was going to say, back back in back in those days, like I said, guys would leave the WWF or WCW and come right to the independents. So I'd say, like, kind of personally, I really, really liked working with. I really liked working with Tito Santana. He came in right out of WWF. So I guess my point when I keep saying that is in those days we would have competitive matches. They weren't nostalgia acts at that point, is what I'm saying. They were like coming off of TV and whatnot. So I really, really, Tito Santana was the one guy I guess I was in it about 4 years when I worked with him. And I said, so what would you like to do tonight? As I do to the guys ahead of me. And he said, how about you call it tonight? And if something doesn't make sense, I'll step in and everything. But and the fact that someone like him put that in my hands to put that match together and had trust in me to do that was such a boost to my confidence, but also such a learning experience because, I was like a sponge with those old school workers like that who really knew how to do it. Like I was in awe of them as like I am like a great guitar player. Like, it's like that same kind of, and I wanted to be like that. So when I had a chance to work with a Tito or someone like that, I sucked it up for everything it was worth. And that being said, I probably worked with Snuka the most of all like the mega name type of guys. I loved working with him, easy as pie, and just we had a really nice rhythm. He was so athletic, and again, he came right out of WWF in '92. This was '92 when I first wrestled him in ECW. And I'd also have to say Larry Zbyszko. I wrestled him a bunch of times, and we had really good charisma together, I felt. Larry's stocky and everything. We just kind of, and he's great in the ring, and he's, a lot of these guys are generous too, because they see that you respect it and that you respect them. And once you go out there and work with them, they give you more, the next times and stuff. They just, once they feel you out and see, that you're cool, then they're great. You had that same experience too, Kenny, I'm sure. So
experience, except they all hated me. But other than
no, it was,
and training with you was, and you were much like your trainer Larry Winters. You were patient and you were cool, and you worked me a lot. But
yeah,
one time that we worked, that was, I think I've said on the show, but one of my favorite moments ever was you and I in Madison Square Garden.
Oh, that was awesome. That was awesome. That was a true, it was right before Raw too. It was a dark match right before Raw. And I remember them telling us, they won't know who you are. So just go out and they said, just go. Remember they said, go till we tell you to go take it home.
Yeah.
And we actually
just go until we take it.
Yeah, they were like, just go and till we tell you, because they were like waiting for someone or something. And we went out and just worked, and we got something out of the crowd. I remember, and we walked back, and I remember Tom Pritchard saying, "Hey, great match, guys." And I was like on cloud nine, because it was basic heel face stuff, and that was a hot finisher you had. So that got a nice little round of applause at the end. So that was cool.
Thank you. Glenn actually took my finisher up there, unlike anybody else.
I wonder, guys, is there footage of that match somewhere, do you think?
I think there's got to be somewhere. I think this was 20 years ago, but I think, or however long it was, but I guess they keep that stuff in the archive.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't released it yet, like all that footage.
Because there's so many people that, God, that would be a rogues gallery to watch something like that, because they'd even bring back old stars like One Man Gang or whatever and make them have dark matches, so how many independent, talents got to go up there and have dark matches. That'd be really a cool thing.
Yeah, it was a who's who back then. It's a different world now with the NXT. It changed the business. And now, as we were talking before, it changed the business, but now Monday Night Raw, 2 hours of Raw the other night was all women.
Was it?
Did you watch? Yeah. How do you feel about that, Glenn? Do you think it's fair that 2 hours of Raw should just be straight women wrestling and then maybe give the guys an hour at the end?
Well, I mean, no, I mean, I've always been a fan of women's wrestling, and some of my really good friends in the business have been the girls. But so I am glad to see, and I think there's some really good, women wrestlers out there. But yeah, not. I mean, either that's. I mean, do they have such a paucity of male talent that it has to be? Should be. I mean, it should be more even than anything. I guess. I don't watch Raw much. I get secondhand info and I see clips and stuff, but whatever, I guess whatever's does the crowd go for the women more? I don't know at this point. They usually tend to go for the men more, so I guess whatever's popping the crowd is what they're going with. That's my imagination.
I think they sit on their hands a lot for the girls. I think it gets stale. I mean, every now and then there's lightning in a bottle, but I think it's too much. I prefer the old school, big man, small man matches, which I became accustomed to in pretty much every match up there because everybody was 9 feet tall and built.
Yeah. Oh Lord, yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Yeah, I mean, it's gotten a little out of hand that way. You got to have some workers up there. I was talking to someone just the other day about Jade Cargill. They asked me about, and I said, well, throughout history, they've had guys or women, or they had specimens like that they'd smash over, like Nikita Koloff or Lex Luger, guys that were green but had that look, but they'd go out and they'd put them over hard, and because they couldn't work yet. But then they'd wind up working with guys like Flair and Wyndham and Ronnie Garvin and Magnum TA, and the list goes on. My concern for like a Jade Cargill is that there's no Flairs anymore, or Wyndhams, or these people that can bring her to that next level. It's just, I don't think with this kind of environment, if someone like that looks like that they want to take off, if you're going to smash her over in the beginning, cool. But, I don't know how. I'm surprised from what I'm hearing out of NXT too, that Shawn Michaels, I guess he's drank the McMahon Kool-Aid or whatever, because it sounds like he's training them more like an entertainment than like a sport, or like how to work, which is funny because, I mean, I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of his personally, but he was, in the ring, I just couldn't be beat work-wise.
When you got, and this is special because Shawn wouldn't really talk to anybody, but he walked up and talked to you when you walked in the arena that day.
Shawn Michaels.
Yes.
Where were we there? Triple H too did that.
They both walked right up to you and started talking to you.
Yeah, I don't know why. I have no idea.
Like your arms are bigger than Triple H.
Back in those days. Well, yeah, they were cool though. I thought everybody up there was cool. When when you were talking to everybody, and Steve Blackman, even guys like you wouldn't even think of, were just so nice. Like I think The Rock was really cool. Maybe they were afraid of us. I don't know. Oh my God, they're independent guys. They might snap. What's that?
I always heard, and you got a taste of it too, but I heard everybody was always worried that somebody was going to try and bury him. Back then. I really did. Mark Henry, like Big Show, all those guys were just out of their way to help you with everything.
I thought they were super. Everybody, Shane McMahon couldn't have been nicer. One of the nicest guys. Stephanie, even, everybody, they made you feel at home. I didn't sense any backstage politics or resentment. It just seemed like a good crew to me. But who knows? We weren't on the road. You were on the road with them at that point, a lot more than I ever was. So,
now, do you remember in Penn State, the bar?
Yes.
I'm going to tell this story. So I was not working. Glenn, Jimmy Cicero, and who's the other guy?
Ramblin' Rich Myers.
Rambling Rich Myers. So they were scheduled. I was scheduled in the dark, and my dark got canceled or something. So they were doing a skit down at the bar with the Acolytes, and Ramblin' Rich Myers, for some reason, was just busting my balls all day long. He just would relentlessly wouldn't stop. And I was like, that's enough. That's enough. Hey, that's enough. So then I had nothing to do. I'm like, I'm going to go down and watch their skit down there at the bar because it's right down the hill. We'll all ride down there and I'll watch them get beat up by the Acolytes at the bar. So we get in the bar. They put Glenn in all this Penn State gear because he's supposed to be playing. And he just looked like an idiot. It didn't work because on film, Glenn was 8 feet wide and was bigger than both the Acolytes. So like, yeah, that's not going to work. So they, you remember that?
Yeah, Bruce Pritchard was directing it, I think, if I remember. Yeah.
And then Bruce walked over to me and threw me a Penn State shirt. Went, "Well, you're on, kid." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
It's not going to work with it. All right. So then I get in there, and here's a Ramblin' Rich, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to get you now, you little bastard." And I went over to Bradshaw, and I went, "Hey, come here. Do me a favor." He said that to you? Yep.
That was hilarious.
Man, if you can find the bar fight of me, Jimmy Cicero, Rich Bob, look, I reached up the back of his shirt and pulled him in front of me on the ground, and Bradshaw just teed off.
Oh my God. When he grabs him and drags him down the bar like that. Oh my Lord. It looked like he did, yeah. That was insane. That was fun. Oh my God.
And then Gilbert comes over to me and he's, "Where's the heat?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? What heat? No heat. You used him as a shield. What? No, I wouldn't do that."
Oh my God. Oh my God. That was hilarious too, man. It just, the whole place like exploded when that happened, and he went, oh yeah, they whipped the shit out of him. That was insane. It's insane though. Rich is a nice guy, but it was fun. I mean, he was ball. I mean,
secrets out, Rich. Sorry, you brought it up.
I'm trying to find the bar fight now.
See if you can find it's hilarious.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
But you did overseas work too.
A little bit. Well, I didn't make it to that. Remember the Africa trip you went on with those guys? And I went to England and I had to turn around and come back. Well, do you remember that?
Yeah, you got sick. Yeah, you were sick, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't know what was wrong, and I was like, I had to go back and get, some stuff looked at and everything. That was an embarrassment. I was so embarrassed by that. Mostly stuff I turned like, Japan and whatnot, I didn't do, which, I think if I could do things a little differently, I was so young when I started that I would look at it more with more of a business head now, I think. When you're that young, you're just sort of living the dream, as it were. So, but our bump card gets punched, and then that's about it.
Do you remember your last bump?
I remember the bump that was the one that let me know I needed to stop. I was always taught that you'll know when it's your last match or thereabouts. I'd been having a lot of problems with my back for a long time, from wrestling and lifting and tons of heavyweight lifting and tons of wrestling. But I've been wrestling on a back. What's that?
Let me pause you right for a second. And I don't know if everyone knows this. What did you weigh in the prime of your career? You had to be almost 300 pounds.
In my legit, it was like 272 at my peak, at my heaviest.
Yeah. But you weren't like a heavy, you were fucking jacked.
Yeah, like I guess they call it fat jacked now. But
you were like Davey Boy Smith.
Yeah. I usually ran between when I was like lighter, like 250 probably. Most of my career I was probably 260. But if I get real bulky, I was like low 270s probably. But when you have the oil on and everything, it adds even more. So, I was always taught. I wasn't going to go in there and blow everyone away with my moves. So, Joel, we were impressed upon in those days too to get bigger. It was always we were taught in the back of a gym, and Joel, and he impressed. It wasn't mandatory, but he leaned on us like, put in an hour in the gym before you come to training. And I did, and some of us did. And I also trained at home. I had a gym that I went to in my neighborhood. So I was training every time I turned around, lifting and all that kind of stuff. And, so yeah. So and now, due to age and some issues and stuff, I slimmed down. I'm like Kenny's seen me recently. I'm like 235. I'm muscular, but I'm still always working on it. I still lift hard, real hard, so on it goes. Anyway, that was that. Yeah, I was like low 270s, legit.
The infamous TWA event in Philadelphia.
Yeah. For me, it was like coming home to like the old crew that I started with. But yeah, I know it had, for what I heard, I left by about a little after 10. I was like, man, this is and it was only like intermission or just coming back from intermission. I said, I got to go home. So I got on the road and drove home in a downpour thunderstorm, but it was, I had fun, but yeah, I know there were I heard very mixed reviews. And you were down there. You thought you were going to work, which kind of sucked.
I didn't know what I was going to do. I just know that I got to get something off my chest, which Jack wanted to talk to you about. He wanted to ask you a question because he heard you witnessed an event. Taking place backstage.
Yeah. I definitely want to ask that, but just back it up for a sec about the event itself. I think you're 100% correct that some of the reviews online were not very favorable, to say the least. Yeah. But I think all the fans in attendance went home happy and certainly felt that they got their money's worth for sure. So I think that at the end of the day, that's that's kind of the most important thing. And I think it was everybody talks about it maybe not faithful to the old TWA, but there were so few original workers there that I think Bay Ragni Chubby Dudley did an absolutely phenomenal job. And there were some technical problems too, but I thought on the whole it was a good show. And I know they crapped on my match where I was managing Angel against Super Crazy. But
oh yeah, against Super Crazy. Sure, okay,
yeah,
all right. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh wow, yeah, okay. I was like, yeah, okay, cool.
I was the channeling Bret Hart that night, and I know they didn't understand the storyline, but bottom line was it was a fun show. So I think that's what counts. But we need you to set the record straight on this matter that actually was controversial. Behind the scenes, it didn't make it into the dirt sheets or whatever, but certainly something that everybody that was at the show, was talking about it, and that's the interaction between our broadcast colleague and friend, Mr. Ryder, and one dangerous Doug Gilbert. Did you do you know the history there between the two before we get to the incident itself? I'm sure you do, correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, as far as I know, Doug, I've wrestled Doug before, but I've heard about some substance abuse issues there, and apparently, I think it was New York, if I remember. Kenny was working with Doug in the ring, and Doug was high and dropped Kenny right on his head and really hurt him, and could have ended things for him right there, and hurt him physically, and and you feel when that shit happens, it just doesn't sit right, So Kenny called him out. Called him out on it and said, I don't know when the match took place. I'm not really sure, but yeah, you reminded him who you were from his past. He looked shocked. He was not expecting that. He was not expecting Kenny there, 260-pound man, all jacked up to confront him. He definitely looked deer in headlights, I would say, is a good I mean, because heaven forbid. I know it wouldn't have broken down into anything, but Doug wouldn't have fared well. He had a lot of friends there, and that would have just been a big mess. So I'm glad it went out, but Doug did not cover himself with glory that night. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem. The version of events that was reiterated thereafter told kind of a different story. Mr. Ryder, why don't you fill in the blanks there?
Glenn pretty much got it. Dead accurate. It's exactly what he did. He got high and dropped me on my
There was, I didn't add the colorful language. I was keeping it. I was keeping it PG. He was letting fly. So that was interesting. That was interesting for sure.
I don't think he realized. Well, back then I was a young rookie upstart. I was at 205 pounds. He didn't expect me to be 6'3" and 262.
It's like the kid that you knocked down in high school or not.
Looking up at me like, oh no.
Yeah. He was shocked. He was definitely shocked. And when it ended, he just kind of walked off. I guess I don't know if he had worked yet at that point, but
he hadn't worked. I Jack went out and did his thing, but he did. I will say he did reach out to me in an attempt to smooth it over, and I still was not very gracious or kind to him because I still was pissed off. So maybe I'll reach out and he can apologize again. But
you remember that? You do. You remember when
right?
What's that?
Don't get high and get in the ring. Just don't do it.
Right. Well, yeah, you would think, but yeah. I mean, when you're in there, and it's a real trust, and you develop a bond. Even if you only wrestle someone once, there's always going to be a little bit of a tie there. You work with them in the ring and you trust each other. So yeah, it's distressing when someone dumps you on your head or, takes a liberty or gives you an intentionally stiff shot in the face or something.
Have you ever had a situation like that you were in?
Yeah, when I was in probably I was in my second year, maybe in wrestling, second and a half. And there was a young man I was supposed to be feuding with who just wasn't really popping at the time. And I kept getting put over on him. I was getting a push with Kevin Sullivan at the time with Joel. And I was starting to do a devil gimmick and throw fireballs and all this. That's where I started doing the paint. And so they wanted to start getting me over because I was going to be doing this thing with Sullivan. So they started putting me over on this person. I don't know. He's probably not listening. Anyway, it was Johnny O. They used to bill him as my brother. And so I turned heel on him and we started this little feud in the TWA. And once he kept complaining to Joel about not going over. And, if you're in the wrong business, if you're not if it makes sense to put someone over, that's what you do. That's what you're there. That's what we're all there for, and so he didn't want to do the finish because I was going over again. And, I forget what the finish was, like a DDT. I forget, but I went for the pin and he kicked out and rolled out of the ring and grabbed a trash can. And I'm like, oh, what is he? So John Finnegan may have been the ref. I don't know, but he comes back, and as soon as he came back in the ring, I just pulled him in, boom, and just dropped him on his head out and pinned him. And that was it. Oh, and then in 92, I did a show over in New Jersey, and I wrestled a guy named the Pharaoh. And he was a nice guy, but I don't think he was properly trained. And it was his hometown, so I was putting him over, and he hit me with a moonsault, and he was kind of stiff with it. It was whatever. I was going to let it go, but what he didn't tell me was his gimmick was the Pharaoh, and he had it was the Pharaoh, and he had these druids that would come down. And I didn't know. They didn't tell me this part. 5 of his friends come down the aisle with these druid outfits on, carrying chains. Apparently the gimmick is when he pins somebody, his druids come down the aisle, chain them up, and drag them back to the dressing room like they're dragging them to hell or whatever. Nobody told me this. So I knew I was putting him over. He hits me with the moonsault. It's kind of stiff. Boom, 1, 2, 3. So I'm laying there selling it and stuff, and I see these guys starting to come down the aisle, and I'm saying, "What the fuck is this?" And they're coming into the ring, and I remember John Finnegan was the ref for that one. I remember, and they start like putting their hands on me. These guys, like they're gonna. And again, I didn't know, and I said to John, "What should I do?" And he goes, "Just go crazy on them." So, in a short order, there were 6 guys laying there on the floor, because they were like his friends. I'm like picking up the one and throwing them at the other and picking up the chain, wham, wham, and stuff like that, because that's just not cool. I would have, I don't know. That's kind of, I don't know if I like that gimmick anyway, but if they at least told me about it, that'd have been a different story. But again, that was another world ago. So it's happened a couple times earlier on, but no, as I got older, no, but we're all learning.
You weren't very, very messed with. I noticed you were actually the locker room leader in most of the locker rooms.
Yeah, I think so.
You were the locker room leader when you were there. Did you feel like they were giving you the respect you deserve all the time?
Where?
Anything.
Where's that?
Whether it's ECWA or TWA, did you feel like you were getting the respect you deserved?
Well, yeah, TWA. I was young, and we were all like coming up, earning our way. Definitely, yeah. Like pretty much everywhere else, ECWA, and anywhere I was given a chance to. I always like to help out when I can. And listen, we all dreamt of most of us. You don't see a lot of guys that just get into it for a job so much anymore. Most of us were fans, and I'm going to try to help somebody unless they are just have absolutely no talent, and got to be honest with them. But other than that, I try to give back as much as I can, but it's not for everybody. It's really not. So
I think on behalf of myself and everyone else, I've always told you privately, but I'll tell you publicly, I can't thank you enough for everything you taught me. You were my guide, and always my go-to guy to make sure I was doing the right thing. So everything I had was because of you and your guidance. I greatly.
Oh man, well, that means so much, and especially for like you went on and did so much, and you still come down to WrestleTech and work with the young guys, and that was always like when you're at the peak of doing your WWF work, you'd come down to the school and make the time, and so I was always really happy to see that. So, man, it was my pleasure. And now the shoe's on the other foot. Now you're the big, massive one. I'm trying to catch up to you. Ever since the con, I started, lifting a little heavier and eating a little bit more, trying to, but yeah, man, that was fun. I thought it was a fun night just to kind of hang out and see everybody again, despite all the negativity. And I got to meet some cool people. You probably did too, and Jack and everything.
That's a conversation with Kid Cash. Kid Cash. The last time I ever stepped.
Oh yeah.
The last time I ever stepped was with Kid Cash.
No kidding.
I had my Evil Knievel outfit on.
Cool.
I saw him and I walked over, "Hey Cash, and see how good your memory is." And he goes, "Evil Knievel."
That's awesome.
That great. So
that's awesome.
It was a great conversation with him, and it was good. Maurice is running shows in Ireland now.
Really?
Little bit.
Really? No kidding.
Yeah, Ireland is good for wrestling at the moment. So
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So you run a promotion?
We're doing really well here.
You run a promotion over there then?
I don't own the promotion, but I help promote some of the shows. I moved them down. They were near Dublin, and I moved them down the south near where I live. Took a gamble on a couple of shows, and we sold the 2 of them out. So we're running maybe 3 to 4 a year. I only live in a small town, population of 1,000 people. So
wow,
it's pretty good,
Oh man, that's great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've never been on that side of wrestling before, and we've got a lot of good people over here and a lot of guys willing to learn, so it's really good.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. That's great. Man, keep going and good luck. Wrestling can use all the good people in it can. So, but yeah, go ahead.
we've got a small country, but as you can see, like we have a lot of big sports stars coming through. You know.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. And wrestling, so there's a good scene there, and it seems like it's growing.
Yeah, there's a good scene here. OTT is the biggest promotion in Ireland. It's actually one of the biggest promotions in Europe now. So they actually had the WWE Tag Team Champions there a while ago, Finn Balor and JD, but they are Irish, but still to get contracted talents with the belts to come over. Who else did they have? Lyra Valkyria, she's on Raw. She's also Irish. She came over. They seem to have a relationship there with WWE to get some guys over now and then, which is cool.
Oh, that's great. That's really great.
Yeah,
yeah, man. Continued success. That's awesome. Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, I've got to ask the question. You pointed out earlier some very salient facts about the business today in terms of the major organizations. With WWE not doing a lot of house shows anymore, do you think there's an opportunity there for independent organizations in the U.S.? Canada is a totally different scene, but in the U.S. to bring back interest in a more traditional pro wrestling product, but most importantly, to be financially viable, because I know you know how cost ineffective it is to run independent wrestling.
Yeah. Yes. I definitely think there could be an opportunity there for independent promotions to grow, because WWE is getting just more and more and more television pay-per-views, almost like it's becoming like a UFC thing. It's just going to be pay-per-views and that kind of thing. But people in smaller towns and things want wrestling. They need to be serviced, as it were. So, like look at what Jim did, or some of the other really successful promoters that can it's all about getting your local talent over too. I mean, Joel did it, Jim Kettner did it, where the local guys are over to the point where you can just run, mostly whole cards with your homegrown guys. So if they can get some good independents running in these towns again, it's going to look different enough at this point. It's almost like the old school stuff will look novel to them now, because everything is so, it's so rote, like, okay, well, 3 elbows to the stomach. Now they're going to hit the ropes here and just turn, you can see it coming on my, it looks to me like they're going through motions. It's not, I think independent wrestling can be so much more organic, and it's much more up close. Fans want that, they want that. And if you're able to bring in a star on top, again, this is how we used to do it, and a solid undercard, I see no reason why, wrestling on local wrestling can't take off big again. You got to go to the right places, of course. But yeah, I mean, maybe I'm being a little overly optimistic about it, but I believe in wrestling, and I think that if people are given something that they like, you got to listen to them, though. You could definitely have a thriving promotion in a small. We don't have territories anymore, but the good independents in the '90s reminded me is the closest we were going to get anyway. But yeah. It's kind of a long answer, but yes, I do think so. And with maybe less WWE stars able to work independents, the local stars will seem that much more within reach and entertaining. But they've got to be good. You can't have the independents like some of them now. You know what I mean? That are really, really very backyardish. They've got to be good, with good wrestlers, and engaging in good booking. Absolutely, you could. And if you start adding some more realism, for God's sakes, at this point, I think people are hungry for that. I mean, we were taught, make it look legit as possible, without hurting somebody, but lay it in, make it look good. Don't spend a minute on the top rope setting something up and having the people watching you, just to pull off something that is going to look spectacular. At least lay in a punch, at least set them on the top and then pickle them, boom, and then set them up. Like, they just put them up there and then they go up, and sometimes they stumble a little bit. Jesus Christ, just shove them in. You know what I mean? There's just none of that kind of thinking. none of them, I don't think, really, other than maybe sports, I don't think they've fought much in life. They don't know how to sell, So if people got to see some really good selling on an independent show, a little bit of juice maybe when it's called for, cut a promo, you could do it. You could do it. Absolutely. I think people are ready for something different again.
You want to hear this is a true story. Where it's me, Glenn, and JJ Johnson, and we're all handcuffed to the ring.
Yeah.
It's a steel cage match at Jim Kenner's. And we were wrestling with brute force. Right? I think JJ was starting to match with somebody. And as the timer would go off, they would unlock our handcuff, a random handcuff, and one of us would get in the ring. So it could have wound up being, 3-on-1 or whatever around there. Glenn is handcuffed to the ring. Legitimate, a shackle. Who was it? Viper gave it to you, right?
Yeah. Lauren. Yeah. He was a bounty hunter.
And he looks at me and goes, we have a problem. And he's just got his arm up against the ring. I'm like, what are you doing? He's, I broke the handcuffs.
Yeah.
He was just
yeah. Yeah, I just kind of.
He's still handcuffed. He legit was that strong. He broke the freaking handcuff right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy, youth, crazy. What do they say? Young, dumb, and full of you know what? It's a family-oriented show. I don't want to.
Not really.
But, and you're selling in the crowds like, oh, they're all into it and stuff. And I got a little overexcited, I guess, and pulled too hard.
Your 600 bench press to rip the freaking
yeah, right. Yeah, that was about that time too. Yeah, I was pretty peak at that point when we were doing those matches with them. So,
where can the fans find you on social media, Glenn? And do you have any plugs to talk about at this time?
I don't right at the moment, but I will probably in a couple of months. I'm working on something, but they could. I just Facebook. Kenny has it's Glenn and then my shoot name in the middle and then Osborne at the end. So Glenn, Myra, Osborne, just at Facebook, and the profile pic. It's a wrestling pic. So yeah. So anyone hit me up. Hit me up on there, and I think that's it. I haven't gone into like Instagram or anything like that yet. Do you like that? I mean, seems like that's where it's all heading. So I got to.
Instagram is no more than a promotional tool, really.
Okay.
Whereas Facebook is more kind of for friends and family, I guess, and things like that. But if you want to promote something, Instagram is the way to go as well.
Okay. I appreciate that. I try to speak the language of the youth, so I have to keep up on all this stuff so I don't become... Well, actually, my saying was always, if you're not in style, you can never go out of style. So I've had a ponytail for the last 30 years. But, so cool, man. But that's it, really. And,
I'll tell another story like Glenn that I thought was just so funny. And this is one of the things that inspired me to work out as hard as I did. But he would sit in the back just staring at these guys that never worked out. And they're getting ready to get in the ring, and they're just totally, and you could just see the anger growing over his face. And he would just get mad.
Yeah, I mean, some guys are a little, I don't know. I don't know. I've always grown up on the guys like, I love the territories. I grew up on that kind of stuff. Those, the bruiser guys and stuff. So, yeah, it's a little weird to see guys that are like under 200. Like, I always thought the cutoff was maybe like, Bill Dundee was a cutoff. Like, you had to be at least 5. Bill Dundee was a jacked little dude, but like 5'7" and 200 would be good. Anything below that, it's a little tough. You better be a really good high flyer, So, but the high flyers then were like Brad Armstrong, like 235. So it's a whole different.
Pillman was a high flyer.
Pillman was a great high flyer. 225, whatever he was, 230. Muda, those guys. I don't know, it just looks so credible. You know, when people, I never understood why people, you know, and it's a very unpopular opinion. I thought the Hogan leg drop was a good finisher. I don't know why people find it. It's a 300+ pound man crashing down across your chest. Like, maybe people never been around don't realize how big he really is. You know, to lay at that time too, like to lay there, and I don't know. It looked pretty devastating to me, but that's just my opinion.
If you haven't been around Hulk Hogan, you don't realize how big he is.
Most people don't realize how big, especially those old. My God, when I got around those first shows Joel was running and bringing in like big name talent who were. When I was first on those shows, I was like, holy shit. I got to really train. Like, I got to get a lot bigger because some of those guys, I mean, it was the first shows I was on, like Kamala and the Samoans and, you know, Ken Patera and Mike Sharp, these huge men. And I was just like, oh, fuck, I got a lot of work to do. So, you know, but,
you did it, and it was an honor watching your career. And it was
thank you. And remember, Kenny, one other thing too. The night of when Draws broke his neck, you and I were leaving, and you said to them, "It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt." Do you remember that?
I did.
And then they went out and had the match, and Draws had the accident.
They were fucking
That's
around.
true. Yeah, my hand to Michael. That is a true story. It's creepy.
That's right. They were fucking around. I said it was going to happen.
Yep. And that was, and I remember the next day, and you called me, and you said, "Oh my God, did you hear what happened?" And oh my God, that was terrible. And you were like, "I can't believe the last thing I said to him was, it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt." I mean, that's unreal. So I had to get that one out there.
Now I'm going to be the one to kibosh poor Draws. Here goes the
Yeah.
Here goes the hate.
Yeah.
Ryder.
No, it was just you were just, they were buds, and, you know, you were just being funny. But that was a terrible shame. God bless him. You know, R.I.P.
Glenn always enjoyed when someone 100 pounds less than him would call a power bomb on him. If somebody called a power bomb on me, Glenn, what would you have done? Yeah, right. Glenn threw a punch, but it's a drill. Glenn hit you with a drill. I throw a baseball. He throws a drill.
Oh yeah.
When he tries to really throw it, the hand doesn't turn. It just comes right out.
Oh God. Well, we could go on all night, but sadly, I'm sure you have other guests lined up.
No, we're very, very pleased that you made the time to come on today. Certainly appreciate it. I'm thinking we can do this again, but until then, we'll keep in touch and make sure to be aware of what you have going on, and we'll do it again.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun catching up with all of you. All right, guys.
Good to see you, my friend.
Take care. All right, Kenny. See you guys later. Bye.
Thanks.
Well, that certainly didn't disappoint. I think we could do another couple installments of that.
Yes. And then I think what we need to do now is we need to end this stream, and then we need to start Ryder's wrestling review, because we haven't done that yet.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking we should sign off for this and perhaps save some of the news for next time. Does that sound good, gentlemen?
Yes,
we can do that.
Well,
I'm just going to bang through it real quick. The 30-second interpretation: Raw was terrible. The female pay-per-view was awful. I don't think Seth Rollins was hurt. I think it's a work for him to cash in on CM Punk, and that's my review for the week.
Yes, but what I will say is I didn't watch the women's pay-per-view, but everybody is saying online how brilliant it was, and they really are. So I don't know. I haven't seen it.
You know what I like about the women's pay-per-view? The finish, when it's over. I like that part. When the whole show's over, that's the part that I like.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of separate going on there to put that over.
They had all these great legends, women's wrestlers in the crowd, and they didn't even use them for anything. They just had them sitting in the audience. What's this sitting in the audience all about? This is like TKO, UFC kind of stuff, yeah?
They had my girl Ivory there.
Yeah.
I love Ivory. We gotta get her on here. She's a riot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely.
What about last news item of the week? What about Goldberg's retirement match and all the controversy about how it was. Immediately after the finish, they cut away to one of their extended commercial breaks, and then they cut off his retirement promo. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they got sponsors that paid for time on the show. They had no choice. It wasn't a shot at Goldberg. He can't have the whole end of the show because sponsors paid for that spot. So that's why. It wasn't a shot at Goldberg.
I'm sure they've released a full one on YouTube or something like that, probably.
I think it's there already for sure.
There you go.
But it seemed to me that they probably, I know why they cut it off at the end, but I think maybe they could have plotted it out a little better immediately after the finish to not cut away. But you guys saw the match itself? What did you think of it?
I thought it was better than most people would have expected, and I think it's a nice way for him to go out. And people will actually miss Goldberg. The same people that are crying about him being on the screen now will miss him in about 4 or 5 years' time when there's 0 stars in the WWE.
I question whether he was supposed to go over or not, based on what happened to Seth. If Seth actually hurt, I bet you Goldberg was supposed to go over and cash in on Goldberg. But now, if he's not hurt and it's a work, we're going to have him cash in on Punk SummerSlam. So
we'll have to.
Goldberg, he's a gentleman. He's a great guy, and I wish him well. I think he gets a lot of flack, but he did his job flawlessly for his entire career. And you got one guy saying you hurt him after all that. That's a pretty good record.
And he looks great still.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He really has no ego. He tapped out in his last match, for God's sake.
We'll have to see if your theory proves correct about the injury to Rollins being a work. If it is, it's one of the most elaborate in history. So good for them.
It'd be a good one. That would give them some ratings, gentlemen. Until next week.
That's it for this special edition of Ryder's Rasslin Review with Mr. Glen Osborne, a real gentleman, and man, does he have knowledge and stories to share again. I think we'll do that again. But until next time, for Morris and Mr. Ryder, I'm Jack Kilby saying thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching this video. Please give it a like if you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Cheap Heat Productions. Don't forget to hit the notification button and you won't miss any of our upcoming interviews, recurring programs, or entertainment products.